I just 3 months into it just said I can't do this anymore, and I went to the club. I just not long turned 16 by this point, and I just told the club I had to go. And they let a 16-year-old boy who was 50 miles away from home walk out of Easter Road Stadium that day. I went homeless. I didn't go back home. Felt like I'd let my family down, let myself down, like I'd thrown away the biggest opportunity ever. My lowest point came last year, and it's difficult. So difficult to speak about. I get so emotional all the time. It felt selfish to feel like that, and it didn't feel selfish to take myself out of the equation, or to kill myself almost.
It's been really interesting to see you on this journey now to a more mindful and happy life.
When I came out of hospital, and I had this overwhelming urge to try and use my experience to help people, and Siobhan was the same. We just want to be there for people who just feel like, I just need a wee break, or I just need a wee support group or a community of people.
Yes, people, thank you for joining me again for another episode of the Football and Feelings podcast with me, Leon Masters. I'm your host. And my guest this week on this episode is a man who is prolific in this football and mental wellness space. He's a huge part of this like very niche online community that I've quite recently started to feel like I'm a part of. It's Aaron Connolly. Aaron, how you doing, man?
Hi Liam, how you doing? Thanks for having me on. Thanks for the very nice introduction as well. I don't think of myself as any big part of it, but it's always nice that people connect with me and believe that I'm doing good work, so thank you.
Pleasure, mate. No, you are. I wanted to touch on later in this episode on the stuff that you document on social media, but I feel like this episode's been, from my end, it's been a long time coming, so I'm really happy to get it booked in and to get it done here. Let's start with the latest news that I saw on Twitter yesterday. You and your partner Siobhan were just awarded with Best Volunteers in Adult Football, right? In South East? Is it South East?
Yeah, in the South East. Yeah, so we got the news early this week, and it came completely out of the blue. So we were nominated and won the award for the Best Adult Volunteers in Grassroots Football in the South East of Scotland, which sort of covers Lothian and the Borders in Edinburgh, where we host one of our Time to Tackle groups, and I'm sure we'll touch on Time to Tackle much more later. But yeah, it was really nice just to be thought of, and for people to go out their way to nominate us. It's given us, a little bit of a thank you for the work that we do. But I mean, we would do it rewards aside. Myself and Siobhan both love what we do and love delivering the sessions that we deliver, and we just can't wait to get back on the pitch now. Having had a positive update yesterday from the government, it looks like we're not too far away.
Yeah. Have you got your first session booked in, or is it still a bit?
Yeah, so we will restart our Glasgow group, which was the original group launched in October last year. So we'll restart that on the 2nd of September. And then what I will say for people out here listening, from then it's going to get really busy. So look out for Time to Tackle nearby you soon. We'll be in many, many new and different communities all over Scotland's Central Belt and the Far.
Class, man, class. Let's start, before we touch on some of these topics, I wanted to touch on your football career first. You came through the youth setup, right, at Ayr United? Is it Ayr United, right?
Yeah, so I spent, I went into sort of academy development football at 9 years old, spent some time at Celtic and Rangers and Hibs. Initially went full-time at Hibs, and without rehashing the full story, that just didn't work out. It was probably the first time I'd suffered with mental health issues was back then, albeit I didn't know what it was. And I eventually came through after that little tough period of time, got myself back into football at Ayr United, and that's where I made a breakthrough into first team football at 18. And again, it wasn't a distinguished career by any imagination, but I achieved something that a lot of people would have loved to achieve and that I set out to. Didn't work out for me longer term, and I sort of dropped into non-league football. And I still play to this day. I have played non-league football for 9 years now, at a handful of different clubs, and I'll probably always play at some sort of level while my legs will allow me. To speak about football being my escape a lot, and I've had some real tough times in it. And but the older I get, the more appreciative I am for the opportunity to play.
When you were at that age, and like you said, you were 9 when you started playing academy football. That's so young. Did
Yeah.
a career in football? Did that sort of feel like that was definitely going to happen? Was that like the natural route for you, or was it quite
Yeah.
surreal as a
I
young
thought
lad?
I thought that was all I set out to do from about 5 or 6 years old. I don't remember saying it specifically, but my family sort of said from that young age I want to be a footballer, and my uncle specifically, done everything for me. They took me all over the country. I was training 4 nights a week at some points, being 13, 14 years old, going straight from school and things, and I got all the support. And it became started to feel like pressure at times. As I moved in towards playing full time, it felt like it was an external pressure. Like I had to do it for everyone else and not for myself, and that probably culminated in some of the issues and difficulties I had. But yeah, I thought football was going to be the only thing for me. It didn't work out quite that way. But what's quite nice now is I've sort of come full circle, and having gone through everything I've gone through, that I'm sure we'll speak about in greater detail. I'm now using football to help myself and also to help other people. So it's a beautiful sport. I love it dearly, despite some of my frustrations and difficulties in my time playing.
Do you have, like you touched on there very briefly, do you have like a first memory of your mental health sort of affecting either your playing or outside of playing, or was it at the time? Is it something you didn't understand?
I
What
had
was happening?
At the time I had no idea. You know, Looking back now, retrospectively, and sort of reflecting on my life, like I have done a lot over the past 16 months, while I've been in this recovery phase, if you like. I'm talking 15, 16 years old. I moved away from home, so people would understand and hear my Glasgow accent. I lived in Edinburgh, so it's about 45 miles, 50 miles. I moved away at 15 years old. I was taken out of school and signed my first full-time contract at Hibs, and they put us up in a flat, and it was me and another 17-year-old. Now, you can imagine taking two boys out of the west coast of Scotland and dumping them in this flat 50 miles away without their family. It was just so, so tough. And I think I was the youngest who was full-time I think there was about 25 of us full-time, age ranges from 15 to 19, 20, all in the same dressing room. And I was the youngest, or at least one of the youngest. I was very quiet. I'm not the guy now you hear who you'll understand over the next hour loves to chat and talk, but I barely said 2 words every day that I spent there. We were there 8 till 5 every day. I barely said anything. And that the boys started to take the mick out of me for that. And that's football. That's what putting 25 young boys or guys together does. It's an environment that I enjoy now, but at the time I wasn't ready. I found it really tough. I thought I was weird. I started telling myself I was weird and I was strange, and it turns out that I was just shy. I just had some anxiety, and I was a kid, and that was fine. But at that time, 13, 14 years ago, I had no idea what was going on, and the main thing that I couldn't do was because I couldn't relay my feelings to anyone. I didn't know how to convey them to people, or to speak to an adult, or approach my coach or manager, or the head of youth at the time, to tell them what was going on. So I would go home at night. I would be in tears sometimes. I would just be in the room, just breaking my heart, breaking down. And then 3 months into a 3-year contract, and Hibs at that time were bringing through the best players in the country. And you had just Stephen Fletcher, Derek Riordan, Kevin Thompson, Scott Brown, Stephen Whittaker. All these players had come through in the batch a couple of years before me, and then the next batch were coming through. Sort of Lewis Stevenson, Paul Hanlon. I was in that sort of in with the guys, and I just 3 months into it just said I can't do this anymore, and I went to the club. Just not long turned 16 by this point, and I just told the club I had to go. And what's galling between now and then, if a young boy went to the club and said that now, I'm sure they would get a whole host of support and put in place, and conversations would take place. Whereas with me, after a 5-minute conversation, I was took upstairs, signed a release form, and let go. And the club never followed it. And I'm not trying to criticise them, but they never followed up on me. They never checked up what happened. They let a 16-year-old boy who was 50 miles away from home walk out of Easter Road Stadium that day and make his own way. And I went homeless. I didn't go back home. I had felt like I'd let my family down, let myself down, like I'd thrown away the biggest opportunity ever. you can imagine, working your whole life up to that point for that opportunity and then throwing it away after 3 months. That's how I felt. So I went and lived in a homeless unit after that.
That's an I can't even imagine having that much pressure on my shoulders at an age like that, especially at 15, 16. They are the years where you're meant to be finding out who.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not something I've spoken. A lot of people focus on, what happened last year in my adult life. But I think this is probably just where I am right now. It's reflecting back further into my life to look at how it's come as a whole and how everything's happened. It's really made me. I'd almost forgotten that it happened. Not the football side, but the homeless unit. It's so far back. But if people who are out there went through therapy and the like, as you start to dig back into it, you realise the sort of trauma that can have and the impact that can have on you as an adult. So yeah, I spent a few weeks in a homeless unit. I've spoken about it on another podcast recently, but I was terrified again. Speaking of anxiety and social anxiety and things that I had as a kid, I used to. If anyone, I hope no one has ever been in this situation, but it's the type of place where people who suffer with addictions, who aren't living a normal adult life or a traditional one, are suffering with a lot of probably mental health issues were around at that time in that unit. It was scary. It was a really, really scary place. There was constant fights. There was constant police around. I seen a stabbing outside the window. Just stuff like that. I was just like, I just lived such a sheltered life as a kid. And when I started being subject to things like that, and I used to lock my door. I would go out really early in the morning. I'd buy these, little packets of noodles you get, because all you had in the room was a kettle pretty much. So all I could eat all I knew what to do was pour hot water into these noodle pots. So I would just survive on them and sweets and crisps and nonsense like that. So I would go out in the morning and buy what I needed for the day with whatever money I had. And then I would come back, lock my door, and then just wouldn't leave, and that would be it. That would be me for a few weeks. But that was it. That was just how it was. That was my life at that time. I didn't know, how crazy that sounds now when I think about it. But being 16 years old in that situation, but hey, there's people worse off out there. There's people struggling with a lot more. And I wouldn't change it now, because despite going through everything, it's made me the person that sits here today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, being exposed to that sort of atmosphere at such an age, especially when I imagine a few months before that, you never would have guessed that you would have ended up there. What was next? What happens after that? Did you go back home and start playing again, or?
I managed to get myself a job in a kitchen cleaning dishes. Managed to get a job in a restaurant, and that eventually led to me sort of managing to get enough money together to get a flat. Started to put that over the course of about 18 months, 2 years. Got myself back playing at United. I took about 6 months off or something along those lines. Went to a trial at United. I can't even remember how I got in touch with them. I think maybe they put something out. I got back in touch with my family after a period of time, and maybe it was my uncle or something along those lines, maybe seen a trial. They were holding like these open trials for the under-19 squad, and I went down. I think I scored 4 in the trial game, and they signed me straight away. And it was the first time I'd played for a while, and as soon as a club showed interest in me, I wanted to go. So they were in the second division at the time. So I remember thinking in my mind, like, maybe I'll break into the first team. But I played my first season under 19s when I was 17. And I think I scored like 40 odd goals, and I got the love back. I don't know what it was. I think there was just something that I just loved. I was doing, we were full time doing a college course, so you trained in the morning, done college in the afternoon, and I just loved it for that season. I was playing with people my age and amongst my peers. I was still really quiet, but I'd probably come out myself a little bit more. I'd obviously been through what I'd been through, but I felt like I was putting my life together, and I was probably quite proud of myself at the time, if I'm honest, at what I was achieving. I was working in kitchens at night and working on Saturdays or Sundays, depending on when my game was. I'd work in the kitchen, and things were going all right. And then I broke into the first team the next season. I was training with the first team for about 3 or 4 months and broke in, made my debut, and obviously was high as a kite. The local newspaper were coming to see me and all that sort of stuff, and it was all talking about how I'd built myself back up and what were my future aspirations and stuff like that. And at that point again, you get all that same stuff where when I first went full time to being a first team, you get that people blow smoke up your ass and tell you what you're going to do, and you believe it. You're a kid. You're a kid. You've got no sense of reality, so you start to believe that you can do that. You just soar on, and I think when I took the first wee knock at Ayr, I remember it. The following pre-season, I was sort of in and around the team again, and I was actually doing pretty well. I was coming off the bench, I'd scored a few, and then the manager dropped me out the squad one week, and that ended me mentally. I could not cope or comprehend with that. Now, probably partly my failing, in that I just couldn't understand it. I thought I'm doing everything right. I didn't, just that naivety and wanting to play, and it knocked me for six, and all that. What happened when I was 16, being in a changing room, that all came back. I went right back into my shell. I started feeling all the anxiety again. Started feeling like I wasn't good enough again, and I just let that consume me. And eventually, after I think about 8 or 9 months of that, I barely kicked the ball. And at the end of the season, I just moved on. I didn't even go to. You might have a meeting at the end of your contract to go and have a chat and stuff. I didn't even turn up. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, I was playing in an environment. We got relegated the season before, and I'd missed a bit of chance at the end of the season that I probably should have scored. And then broke in, as I said, done all right. But then when I fell back out, everything just came back, and you playing with guys who it was a livelihood. For me, it didn't really feel like that yet, but it was for these guys. And it was a tough environment, like all football changing rooms are. And it was the first time I'd be experienced that where guys needed the win bonuses to survive almost sometimes and stuff like that. And being relegated had an impact on other people within the club. And it's, for me, when I thought about that and when I considered it, it was just too much for my mind to take on, and it would just lead me back into being sort of quiet, shy, reserved. And then I started to think again, am I weird? And people would take the piss out of you because that's what they do. And I think you can make an argument for some of it being bullying, what happens in a football changing room, but there's this unwritten law or understanding that that's just what it's like. And for me, at a young age, I just wasn't ready for it, so it was easier to run away from it. And that was my own failing. I couldn't face things head on. I couldn't speak to people. I didn't know how to, as I say, convey the message that I wasn't feeling so good. So I hid from it, in all honesty.
It sounds like pressure and anxiety are very recurring things that you, from what you've been through. Do you think that's carried on afterwards now? Is that still something that you battle with every day?
I like to think I cope well under pressure now. Anxiety is something that comes and goes for me. Don't get me wrong, what I'm quite prone to is, something will go wrong, and, we all have our challenges. Everyone has their obstacles every day and has their issues. I'll get serious anxiety when I know something's happening that is out with the norm, or something that I need to deal with. I can be quite prone to being really anxious about that, and it'll floor me. Like, people will be like, well, everyone has that, but what it will do to me is it will physically drain me. It'll not only like play in my mind, but physically, I'll really struggle. So I've had to deal with that probably my whole life, and I've become better at it now. Whereas, like I said, when I was 16 initially, 19 at Ayr United, or just about to turn 20, I ran from it. I just felt like I can't cope with that, and I didn't like the feeling of it, so it was easier to avoid it. I think now, being an adult, a father, and having worked on a career and stuff like that, I've learned to deal with it better. I've been through the therapy of it, but I think it's something that we need to talk about. I couldn't have spoken about it 13 years ago. It was just get on with it. That was that would have been the reaction. Get your head up, get on with it, shit hams, stuff like that. Whereas I think now it would be much easier, and not overly easy. It's still tough, but I think it's certainly easier for me to say to someone, look, this is how this makes me feel, which makes it difficult for me to deal with it. And I know I still need to handle the situation, but I need to do it a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to sometimes explain to people who haven't experienced it as well. Like it makes it sometimes makes you feel insecure when you're trying to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I've got this voice in my head, and it sort of tells me that I'd be more comfortable just staying at home, and that restricts you.
Yeah.
And in a way, it feels I'm talking off my own experience. In a way, it sort of almost feels comfortable. It's like no, don't go out there. That's really uncomfortable. Just stay inside.
Yeah.
You'll be much better there. But it's a difficult thing to try and explain to people, right?
It's a protection thing, so it's an escapism, and I've said this word a lot recently. Escapism, I think there's things you can use that are positive behaviours that can help you escape, and then there's on the flip side there's the negative behaviours that can help you escape. And when I say negative, people instantly think of like drugs and alcohol and all of that. But what's quite a negative behaviour is, like I'll do quite often, and Siobhan, if she was here, would account for this, but I'll lie on the couch and I'll just put the covers on my head and I'll just lie there, and that's just because I feel really uncomfortable and the anxiety will get to me, and sometimes rather than deal with stuff that I probably have to deal with, and that sometimes just feels like I'm safe. I'm safe on that couch. But if I go out and face some of the adversities that I've had to face over my time, I'm not safe, and it's uncomfortable, and I'm looking at. Sorry, I've got a whiteboard here next to me, and one of the quotes on it genuinely says, "Get comfortable being uncomfortable." Sometimes that's just what you've got to do. But I think what's so important is I can speak about this now today. I can sit here and have this conversation to say, that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's massive as well. That's huge.
When I was 16 years old, I couldn't have I didn't know how to, but I don't think it would have been widely accepted if I approached a manager and said, I feel uncomfortable with him saying to me that. The one that sticks in my mind because it broke me one night was one of the boys said to me, "It's the quiet ones you need to look out for. They always become serial killers, right?" And I know that's like a joke. I know sitting here right now, that's him being funny or trying to be funny, right? But I would genuinely go went home and went, like, is there something wrong with me? Am I headed down a bad path because he said it and it broke me down? But if I'd have went to manager and said he said that to me, manager would be like, well, shut up, he's having a joke. But right now, if I said it now and I said, look, that's how that makes me feel, though, I think it would probably it would be much more accepted now, and it would be an easier conversation. But 13 years ago, I think I'd have been told to shut up and put my boots on and go on with it.
Yeah, things have changed quite rapidly. On this podcast, I like to talk about people's highs and lows because everyone feels these things differently. No one has exactly the same experiences. And like you said, sometimes anxiety, you feel it physically in certain places and stuff like that. But for you, what was life like at your sort of lowest point? Like, how did that feel, and what was happening in your life at that point?
Obviously, my lowest point is fairly well documented now without sounding, arsey and important, but it's been fairly well documented that I had a very near suicide attempt, or suicide attempt, however you want to label it or phrase it, in April last year. And, that was after a few episodes or whatever you want to call it. I call them episodes of depression in my adult life, a few times where I'd taken extended periods off work and things like that, and I just wasn't feeling good. But my lowest point came last year, and it's difficult. So difficult to speak about. I get so emotional all the time. I think I'd just broken myself down. I've said that phrase a few times talking about this sort of stuff. But in 2017, I'd been admitted to, or not admitted to hospital, sorry, I'd been taken to hospital for the first time with concerns over my welfare, let's say, where I'd first dealt with suicidal ideations and thoughts in 2017. Got really tough, and my wife wasn't my wife at the time, Siobhan, took me to A&E, and that's when I first sort of had to engage in a CPN or community practice nurse in the crisis mental health team. So I sort of went through like a 12-week CBT program, a cognitive behavioural therapy program back then. I was off work for about 4 months, I think, and that was the first time I'd had to do any therapy or any sort of behavioural like changes or any sort of consideration for what I could change. And from that point, I think I went back to work maybe September, October time, I got myself back to work. And I made the decision then that I was going to, I spoke about escapism earlier. I made the decision then that I was going to change my life and that I was going to work so hard and be so successful. By this point, I'd been working in an office for about seven years or so in financial services. And we spoke about pressure earlier and how I always put pressure on myself, whether it be external or internal, that I believe there's pressure. So I basically made a vow to myself, right, I've dealt with this suicidal episode now. I'm back, I've changed my medication, which is what I'd done at the time. I've engaged in the therapies that I had to engage in. I'm fixed again naively, not fully understanding this, despite having dealt with it for a few years now. I'm fixed and I'm going to be successful. And successful to me at that point, because having no real life experience or understanding probably, and looking too much on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, success to me at that point was nice car, 3-4 holidays a year, house, we've already got the kid, we're married now, like let's go have a proper adult life almost. So I got myself back to work and I made a vow that I was just going to work so hard. And I worked, I kid you not, 14 and 15-hour days for the chunk of about 19 months straight. Just work. I would be away a lot. Ironically, I was working in Edinburgh, so I was back through in Edinburgh, but living in Glasgow, so I was commuting 4 hours a day. There would be times where I would just stay in Edinburgh because it was easier than commuting, and I was maybe working 15 hours, and by the time you had your commute on and stuff, so I put everything I had into it. And now, as I reflect on it, that was an escape. I just changed my escape to something else. So I just work. If my mind was all consumed by this, then it couldn't be consumed by other things. And I think just shy of trebled my salary, and I did do really well. But by the time we got to April 2019, after almost the guts of 2 years of behaving and working in that way, I was mentally drained. I was physically exhausted. Emotionally, I wasn't connected to anyone. I'd isolated myself from family, from friends. I had actually stopped. I was still going to football on a Saturday, but I wasn't training during the week because I was just work. So I'd sort of taken myself out of the football environment, which would have been a positive escape for me. It would have been a positive coping mechanism for me usually. If I'd had the routine of playing football, physically great for me, mentally it's good for me, but I stopped doing that for a period of time and I was just turning up on a Saturday and sitting on the bench, and that was frustrating me because then I was like, well, I'm not playing, I'm wasting my Saturdays, I could be doing other things. So it was a cocktail of things that happened. My wife, Siobhan, went in to get surgery in early April, which sort of left her almost bedbound but recovering in bed for the best part of 2 weeks, or just over 2 weeks I think. And I felt it coming. I just felt like my mood was starting to really drop off. I noticed the triggers and the signs. I was starting. One of my things, I'm not a drinker. I never really have been. Started going out on like Friday nights and stuff. I'd go for a couple of beers after work. That's totally out of character for me. And it's usually a sign that there's something underlying that I'm just trying to escape or run away from a little bit. I didn't talk about it, and I kicked myself for it because I knew that something wasn't right. I knew I wasn't feeling good, and that continued for a couple of weeks. And the thoughts, I'm very much a self-loather. I'm sure when you hear me talk about it, you can see it's always about me not being good enough or whatever. That's where the thoughts often go to, and they manifest for me pretty quickly. I'd started to, while I understood that I was doing well at work, I'd started to say to myself, but you're just putting all your focus into that, you're not a good dad, you're not a good husband anymore, you're not playing football anymore. It was always a negative. I wasn't able to look at the positive aspect, and that was just my perspective of it. And those thoughts manifested over a couple of weeks to quite quickly become sort of suicidal and be starting to feel like you're a burden is probably the best way to phrase it. You start to feel like, I think my overriding thought very often was along the lines of, I'd had a breakdown in 2015 or just an episode. I'd had the one in 2017, and here I was again in 2019 dealing with it again. And my overriding thought was, is this just going to be like this every couple of years for the rest of your life, no matter what you do? Is that fair on Siobhan? Is it fair on Rory that every couple of years you're just going to break down? They're probably better off without you. That's sort of, I'm saying it very in a blasé way, but you imagine telling yourself that it's difficult, and that's where my mind took me to. And the week sort of leading up to the Friday night, the 26th of April, was I just knew, I knew in my heart and in my head this was getting serious. And again, didn't tell anyone, and I know I should have. I had thoughts of, it wasn't fair in Siobhan. She was actually struggling and dealing with an actual physical, ailment, and dealing with an operation and recovering from that. How dare I go and put my shit on her again, despite everything we'd been through. Here I was sitting feeling like this. It felt selfish. It really did. It felt selfish, and this is what's so weird about it. It felt selfish to feel like that and to tell her, and it didn't feel selfish to take myself out of the equation, or to kill myself almost. So, but suicidal thoughts sort of came for a couple of days where I started to think about it and idealise around it, and the Friday morning I just woke up and it was just like the weight in my shoulders, everything. I was just completely broken down, mentally, physically, emotionally gone. You're not living in reality anymore by this point. You're literally surviving on, I don't know how. You're just surviving, and you're not in the real world anymore. You're not thinking straight. You're not. Just nothing is how it should be. And I just said to myself, "This is it today. Like, I'm going to finish work today." Someone I'd worked alongside for a long time had a night, was leaving, so they were having like a night out, and I was like, I'll go to that to basically say my goodbyes, and then this is me. And that, I'm almost ashamed that, and I've used this phrase many times, but ashamed to admit, but there was a relief. It was just like, there's like a weight lifted, because you're not to and fro with that decision anymore. And it almost takes a weight off your shoulders, because and you're not thinking of family and people, and I hope no one misconceives what I'm trying to say here. There was no real consideration for Siobhan or Rudy, and that wasn't because I didn't care about them or didn't love them. That was because my mind had taken control of me, and I wasn't acting in any way of reality or how I would normally act. And that's, I think that's what your mind can do to you. It's a powerful thing. I think we probably downplay how powerful it can be, and I see a lot of people when they talk about suicide. I think it's obviously very difficult to understand, but having been someone who's been there or on the brink, I would never, and I would urge you not to judge people for feeling that way. Because it's tough, and it's tough to deal with afterwards. Trust me. The guilt and stuff afterwards isn't easy either. I just think that people need to hear how bad it can get and understand it, and maybe just, for the most part, people do, but I think be a bit more empathetic to where suicidal people who are feeling suicidal, how bad they actually feel, because it's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible thing, and I'm so grateful that I didn't complete suicide that evening.
I wish that I couldn't relate to you at all. I mean, unfortunately, I can, not to quite the same extent. I didn't quite get to that point where it was actionable. But what I found when I reflect on it now, the scariest thing, maybe might be the same for you, I'm not sure. The scariest thing when I reflect on it is that decision, it didn't feel like a big deal. It was just like, I'll go do this, and then maybe when I'm driving home, I'll just end it there. I'll just draw a line there, and then we'll just call it a day, pretty much. Like, it didn't feel like I wasn't sitting there having like an intervention with myself. It's almost like easy to fall into that. I don't know if that's something that you felt.
Yeah, I think for a couple of days, like I said, for a few days leading up to it, and the thoughts were there. That was the tougher part. But as I said when I woke up, and I hate saying it out loud, but I think it's I think people need to hear it. Like, there was a relief, and I was just like, well, thank God that, like, thank God I've made the decision now, because the few days leading up to it made it so difficult. But like you say, when I actually woke up that morning, I thought, right, how am I feeling? It did almost feel easy, and that's why I stress so much. Like, don't think I was living in a real world, or I was in any sense of reality at that point. I did not wake up in the morning and go for, I don't care about my wife and kid. I'm just going to finish this all today. It's not like that, even in the slightest. And I know that's the very difficult thing for people who haven't lived it to understand. And I do my best to say this is how it can get, because I see it. I see it all over social media. I see it when people are talking about it, and when people have sadly passed. I hear this word selfish all the time, and it's absolutely not. Trust me, it's not, and it's also normal. Maybe normal isn't the right word, but it's it can happen to any of us at any time. You're you're one day away from something going catastrophically wrong in your life, and your mind taking you down that route. You know what I mean? Like, you're one trauma away from it.
Yeah, you're quite right. Okay, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I could see it wasn't easy for you to do so. It never is easy to delve into something that deep. To try and flip that round, I don't want us to only focus on those low points. We've been following each other on Twitter for quite a while. I think you were one of the first people that I actually followed when I started the Football and Feelings Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really interesting to see you on this journey now to a more mindful and happy life, and you're documenting it so well. Like, you're happy to post those highs and those lows, and I'm sure that from your point of view, you've learned a lot about yourself in the past year or so. How's that journey been?
It's so hard to sum up. Like, I instantly smile because I remember where I was and what we haven't even touched on that I usually speak about is the 4.5 weeks in hospital, and how tough that was as an environment, and that's another can of worms that you open up, and you see so many difficult things in there, and so many unwell people, but so many fantastic people helping, and amazing staff. And reflecting on the last, what are we, 16 months on almost, just happiness. I speak about a couple of moments in hospital. I'll quickly skim through it, but I got taken to a psychiatric hospital, and I was sectioned for 28 days under the Mental Health Act, and I think I spent like 31 days in the hospital in total. And for the first 2 weeks, because I was still threatening to run away, I was still suicidal. They put me in a locked ward, so you weren't allowed outside, and I could only go to bed at bedtimes. I could only eat at meal times and things like that. And visitors were only allowed in to see me for an hour a day. So I'd see Siobhan every day, and some family would pop by, and friends would come whenever they could. But I'm an active person. You'll know from my Twitter, I like going runs, and I love playing football. Obviously, I like being outside, and I didn't get outside for, I think, 12 days, maybe 11 or 12 days. And no fresh air. The only time you could get fresh air is if you went for a fag after your meal, and I didn't smoke, so I'd never bother myself going outside. I'd just stay in. Probably the only one actually who done that, but I would just sit myself in the break room while they went and smoked. And I got eventually was basically said to me one day, maybe 10th of May or something along those lines, like, we're going to let you outside today. We think you're making progress, and we think that keeping you locked up is going to eventually start to, jeopardise that progress. So, and the sun was shining in Scotland, which is strange, but there was some sunshine that day. And I just remember the sun hitting my face, and the fresh air, and hearing noises again that weren't people talking or people shouting or people screaming, and just like the noise of, I speak about walking out to the main road. The hospital's like on a very busy main road, but you have to walk a fair bit. But you walk out, and then the noise of traffic. I was just like, oh, this feels like real life again. I took a selfie, and I sent it to almost everyone of my contact book of me just smiling again, and probably one of the first real smiles in a long time. And then the next day was a Saturday, and the doctor had spoken to my wife separately to say, look, we're going to let Aaron out on Saturday, do you want to bring the Rory down, my wee boy? And you can get out on the hospital grounds for an hour, and you can sort of spend an hour as a family without any eyes or ears or anyone around. And Rudy brought me a ball. Rudy's like, "Oh, I forgot to see Daddy. We'll take him a ball down and play football." And it's a really amazing picture of me and him chasing a football about on a bit of grass. And that's in the grounds of a psychiatric hospital. But and I'm sure we'll come on to touch time tackles, but that for me epitomises and shows the power of football, that even on that random bit of grass, in a really, really tough environment, football just took all that away from me. But how do I reflect on the last 16 months? As I said, happiness, joy, gratitude beyond belief. That moment, I just spoke about those moments in hospital, sort of, I almost look at them as the beginning of a second life for me, where the first 27 years I was surviving and I was doing what I'd done, and don't get me wrong, I made some bad mistakes over the time, and I'd done some things I shouldn't have done, and like us all, I had my difficulties, but those moments feel like where the recovery actually started, where I had engaged in recovery before and looked at therapy, and I'd done all this before, but I'd never properly went into it until those moments, until I thought, right, and my feelings at the time are very much of, how can I deal with this better? And it's something I talk about to people a lot. When we help people, and we host the groups and stuff, it's like, it was the first time I started looking inward and saying, well, what can Aaron do to do this better? And that's when things probably changed for me. And like you say, I document it as much as I can. I be as honest as I can on Twitter and stuff. I always get the fear about just being a bit too much for people, and they're like, fuck's sake, is he talking about mental health again? But I just try and be as honest as I can. I try and tell you when it's not so good for me. I try and tell people what I'm doing about that when it's not great for me. And when it is going well, I try and tell you what habits I'm doing, because I think the power of this, and what we really believe in, especially running Time to Tackle, is that lived experience and peer support are so powerful. Like, they're underrated just how powerful they can be. There is obviously a proportion of us that need professional help, but I think if you can get the right support network in place alongside that professional help and the medication and stuff like that, the differences in how quickly things can change for you are honestly unbelievable. And that's really what I've done. I've learned, I think the main learning about myself is just that, I said it at the start, I said it briefly, I've gone from this quiet, shy, introverted, probably considered a bit strange person. Even as an adult, I was probably considered that, to someone who loves to talk and connect with people, and I love doing stuff like this. I love chatting to people online. I love hearing people's stories. I love hosting our groups, and you sit in a room, I'll stand up in front of 40 people and talk absolute nonsense, or I'll stand up in front of 40 people and tell them how I'm feeling. I'll share my most vulnerable moments, because I just feel like it helps me, and I enjoy doing it, and that's the biggest learning for me. I've developed so much in that aspect that, and literally, it almost feels like in the click of a finger, I've went from this shy person to someone who likes to be connected with people.
That's class, man. I've really, like, that's oh man, I feel like that's a weight off my shoulders, hearing how you're in such a better place. And recently you've posted some things that have made me think about how I'm approaching my day to day. At the moment, I haven't left the house in 10 days because I've torn a ligament in my ankle. Getting around is just a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
But you've been posting about starting your day off every day with something positive, and that was something that for the past 5 or 6 days I fell out of that habit completely. It's something that I know helps me, but I was waking up and just mindlessly scrolling through my phone, and it would get to midday and I'm like, oh fuck, is this the day? Is this all I'm going to be doing? And it's one of those things that can slip away so easily without you noticing it as well.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, if you've looked on my Twitter and stuff, you'll see I'll go through peaks and troughs where there will be times where I won't do it, but I think it's something I'm really focusing on now, is trying to start the day right, but also what I've really been, and I've been doing it for longer than I've actually been posting about it, but as I said earlier about the whiteboard, and I'm looking at it again because it says on it, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and it also says, what can I do today that future me will be thankful for? and I use things like that to prompt me, and that's the thing that I'm posting about right now. Is like, what am I doing today that tomorrow or in a week's time I'll be thankful for, and I think we can all do that. I think it can be simple. By the way, I'm out doing runs and all that sort of stuff because that's what I enjoy, and some people might just enjoy sitting and reading a book, or I think. And that's a big thing about my journey over the last 16 months is actually looking inward and understanding who I am and what I enjoy. And I know that sounds wanky, right? I've been the guy who's been sitting listening to a podcast like this going, this guy sounds like a tosser, like he knows it all. It's not what it is. It's absolutely not how I want to come across. I've tried things. I've tried the running. The running started in hospital where I started getting half an hour a day out alone, and I would just run for the half an hour. It's actually, weirdly, despite being a psychiatric hospital, the grounds around it are really nice, and I just started running. I played football my full life, hated any running until I got locked up in a ward, and then I started to enjoy it. So I know that helps me. I know it's hard sometimes to get up and do it, but I know if I do it, I'll feel better, and I know that it'll help me in a whole host of aspects in ways that, like mentally, it will help me feel better. I love running and just thinking about everything that's going on and just getting rid of it all. I'll very clearly, if you ever see me run, I'll be doing actions and stuff, and that way me just getting stuff out, just get it out, and that it really helps me do that. And physically, it obviously helps keep me fit. And I like reading, or I'm more inclined to do an audiobook now, if I'm honest. But yeah, just listening again. It's listening to people. It's listening to stories. It's listening to real life stories of people who've overcome it. I love the thought of overcoming challenges. I think you may have seen on my Twitter, I woke up one Saturday in May and said I'm going to run a marathon with no training, and I just ran a marathon. And that purely for me was, let's just set a challenge and do it. And I'd been struggling with a calf injury for a couple of weeks leading up to it, but I just thought, I'm going to do it. And then I done another challenge where, in a week's notice, I basically said to myself, I'm going to run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And again,
that was mad. That was
I
really interesting.
I didn't train, didn't do anything. And my calf actually went during it, and I still finished it by walking. But again, for me, that was just setting myself a challenge and overcoming it. Physically and mentally, just doing it. It's the euphoria of doing it. I love doing stuff like that. But I think those are the main things for me that I just try and focus on. I hope it doesn't come across as me trying to teach you how to live your life or anything like that. Like, there's also days that I'll eat 4 bars of chocolates and 3 packets of crisps and do the square root of nothing. It's very much about finding balance for me. But yeah, the aspect of what can I do today that future me will be thankful for is something that I'm really working on. And I think I just believe that it manifests. It can manifest. It can create a positive cycle. I hear a lot about negative cycles and negative thought cycles, and breaking that, and breaking the cycle. And it's always about, let's break the cycle. But I'm sort of thinking, well, once we break it, why don't we start a new cycle that's a positive one? So that's the sort of stuff that I'm trying to work on for me personally, and that's what we're trying to deliver to our group. There is so much negativity out there, you don't need to go far to find it. I think I, in the past, was always the person who focused on the negative aspect of something straight away. The story or the saying of every cloud has a silver lining. For me, every cloud was dark and rainy, and I never found any silver linings. Whereas now, I can be quite annoyingly trying to look for the positive of it. Just very plainly, my life, just last week, lost my job, and I spoke to my wife and stuff about it, and it was like, well, it happens. Like, maybe it's the universe giving me an opportunity to do something that I prefer to do or I want to do. And I think just changing that perspective, if you can, sometimes with certain situations, just make all the difference. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and it's quite easy to forget sometimes just to do things that you enjoy doing. People get caught up in their own life cycle. Let's talk about Time to Tackle then. You launched that in October, football therapy group. I love the idea of it. Could you tell us a bit about the sort of setup and how it's helping people through football?
Yeah, so launched in October. So pretty much when I came out of hospital and things like that, I had this overwhelming urge to try and use my experience to help people, and Siobhan was the same. We'd been through a lot, not just in what happened last year, and what had happened previously. We felt like we'd learned a lot, we'd been through a lot. and we both, Siobhan's always loved people. Siobhan walks into a room and everyone gravitates towards her. She's one of those types of people who just commands like instant attention. I don't know what it is. I've always slagged her for it, but yeah, she's always sort of loved helping people. She's a nurse, obviously, in accident and emergency. So she's picked a career that has allowed her to fulfill that need of wanting to be helpful and help others. And what I had discovered through my experiences now was that I felt like I wanted to do similar and try and do it if I could. But also, one of the main things and what led to the creation was it as well was like we literally sat down early October last year. We've been talking about something for a while. Football was always going to play a part somehow, but basically sat down and said, look, we need to stop talking about this and we need to do it. And the idea stemmed from basically me and Siobhan saying, well, what sort of group would you have liked to, Siobhan saying to me, what would you have liked to attend if there was a group available? What was it that was missing that you couldn't find that maybe could have helped you? And I just said, well, maybe a support group that used football, and we started thinking, well, how can we do that? And very plainly and simply, we just said, well, we play football for an hour, or we book a pitch for an hour, and we get people together to play. And I think the power of football is everyone who's involved in it or who loves it will understand is that people will come. If you put a football session on, you put a football team together or whatever, people will come because they want to play and they want to meet people, they want to meet friends, and football just brings people together, like probably most sports do. But football's my interest and what I love, and that probably played a part. So we said we'll get people together because we'll offer them a free game of football initially, and that will get people out. So we booked a pitch, and then we said, so what's the next part? Because I think playing football could have positive impact, for sure. I think if you put them football on for an hour and say this is a mental health group, people would come out, they'd play football, they would get, that sort of physical uplift and physical exercise, and they'd also get that little bit of mental respite where they'd be able to concentrate on just playing football for an hour, and it would be an escape for them. But we wanted to do a little bit more than that, and we sort of thought, well, why can't we just amalgamate the idea of playing football and a traditional support group? And I'm not a huge fan of the term support group. I think it scares people away a little bit, and you feel like you're going to sit in a circle and I'm going to go around you one by one and things. It's not like that. But we're like, can we get somewhere that there is a pitch available for us, and there's also a room where we can get together and chat? And it is that. It is purely that. We call it football therapy. That's just our tagline. We thought that sounded quite nice, and it sounded good. But it is, honestly, we come in, we have a chat, we do a little couple of prompts and stuff, just a check-in, what we call a mental health check-in, and that's just to make you, as a participant, consider, how do I actually feel when the question's asked. We keep it all that sort of stuff anonymous, so that if you don't want to talk about it in the open, we just stick a post-it on the board for you. But it gets you thinking, it at least prompts the thought in your mind of how do I actually feel. And if people are comfortable to talk and tell us about it, then we just go and we take it from there. I don't have all the answers, and Siobhan doesn't either, but what we have is within a group, we had like 40 people nearly attending the Glasgow group prior to lockdown, and Edinburgh group of 15 that just started. But all these sharing all these lived experiences, people have all had similar experiences. They're able to help each other. We don't need to have all the answers, and it's just a group of friends now. That's what it's become. And the name Time to Tackle pretty much came from, we were like, well, what do we call it? And it was pretty much, well, let's look at actions of football. Can we pass something? Can we do about shooting? Can we do about crossing? And tackle just felt relevant because, tackling stigmas, tackling poor mental health. It just felt like a nice tagline we could put together, and that was it. It was literally born in a night. That night we booked a picture room and we went for it, and it's grown unbelievably so.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear how the setup works there, because a few months ago, I remember my friend called me and he said we should start a football and feelings team, and because we want to play football as like he said, as everyone does, but we wanted it to be quite often when you playing a football team, it can attract knobheads, to be honest.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Like, there's people that turn up for their 1 hour a week and they just want to be angry, and they don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with anyone. They don't want to share any experiences. So we've been talking recently about like starting up maybe just like a 7-a-side team or something like that, where you just have a community of people where you can come and it's just relaxed mainly. That's the main emphasis there. And it sounds like it's something that you could have benefited from.
Yeah, I think if there's times in my life, looking back, there would have been times where I would have went to something like Time to Tackle. There would have been times where it was too late for me and I'd already missed the boat to try and get that. I think what we're really keen on is obviously, I think it's about preventing crisis, and that's what we want to do. We want to get in there and get people talking about things earlier, and not feeling like they're alone in their own heads, and suffering in silence. And by the time you get them, you're intervening in what is already a crisis moment. We're encouraging you to think. And I say this all the time. I think there's a statistic that goes around that says 1 in 4 people will suffer from poor mental health. I would challenge that and say, well, we'll all go through grief at some point. We'll all lose somebody close to us. And it may be just at times like that you want somewhere to go that can help you. I think Time to Tackle and initiatives like ours can fill that void. People go through divorces. I mean, I speak very bluntly about it sometimes. I've got a 5-year-old kid and a wife, and it's not all rosy in the garden all the time. There are times where I will drive Siobhan mental, and likewise, and everyone will have that in their relationship where you go, oh, maybe on Wednesday night I can get out of the house for a couple of hours and I can have a break. And that's part of life. And we are very heavily focused on mental health, of course, because of our background, but we just want to be there for people who just feel like, I just need a wee break, or I just need a wee support group or a community of people who maybe understand me, and don't judge me, and are there to help me. And that's what we're trying to create. And I think, we've knocked it off so far. It's went fantastically well, and we love it, and we're developing, and we're learning all the time. Myself and Siobhan are studying and things, to greater our knowledge. But I just think it's all about the people who come and they make it really what it is, and we just love doing it. And I can't wait to get back onto the pitch.
Class, man. Before we round this off, obviously let's talk about the podcast that you're launching soon. Do you have a name ready, or is it? Go on. What's the concept?
So the podcast will be called Time to Talk. You'll realise that once I have something, I like to just to keep it all similar. As I've said a few times throughout this, I love speaking. I think people will understand that when they listen to this. I just rabbit on sometimes. But I'm passionate. I think you can sense that I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about mental health. I love football, and I love hearing stories, and I love listening to people, and trying to learn from their experiences. And I'll do a lot of speaking at Time to Tackle and things like that, and listening and dealing with a group, and hearing what they're going through. And it all just intrigues me to hear how everyone deals with things differently. What works for some people doesn't work for other people. I think what I've developed on Twitter, probably mainly since everything came out and I've spoken about it, I've developed some amazing relationships on Twitter with people, some amazing connections, and also there's people who indirectly who I haven't spoken to a great deal, but who I've followed, very closely, who've inspired me. I think there's so many people out there who are inspiring and don't even understand that they are, and probably just think this is just my life, and they don't realise just how much difference they're making to other people in communities probably all over the UK and the world. And I just want to speak to some of these people. I want to speak to them and I want to record it because I want other people to hear it. I want people to be inspired by the same people that I am. And some of them will be, there's some people from the Time to Tackle group going to come on. Some of them will be people you probably know, or pretty. I hate the word mental health advocate and stuff like that. It frustrates me, but are pretty much that. That's what they would label themselves as. But I think it's just born from a love of connecting now, and it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to it, and giving people a platform to go and share their story, because I think, and I'm really big on this, and it's why I often do things like this and probably would never really say no to it, is because I think there's always, as I've said it before on today, negativity is easy to find. You don't have to go far. You pick up and scroll your Twitter feed, or you pick up a newspaper, or you go on your Facebook, you'll find it very quickly. And I think you also find a lot of stories about poor mental health. You find a lot of stories about, unfortunately and sadly, losing people. I think I want to see more stories about people who overcome isn't the right word, because I think this is an ongoing thing, but people who have said, similar to myself and others out there, who've faced this head on and have said, I came close to suicide, but I'm very grateful I didn't do it, or I'm very grateful that I survived it. And I think just maybe giving that hope and giving that perspective just may encourage others to seek help, and not suffer alone and not feel like suicide is the answer. And that the podcast is going to focus that quite heavily, as well as just some people who I like and I think can inspire other parts of your life.
Oh, brilliant. I can't wait to listen to that. I'll make sure I post links in the description of this episode to your social media, so people can keep up to date with that being launched. I think we'll wrap it up there, Aaron. Thank you again for coming on and sharing your experience. I know it can be a difficult thing to do, and I'm sure you've done it so much it's probably beginning to get tedious at times, but I'm still really grateful for you coming on. Finally, the stage is yours. What do you want to tell people?
I think I've said it so many times, and I really want people to continue hearing it, but I think the main thing is that life is worth living, and I promise you that. It really, really is, and you're never ever alone. There's always people out there who are willing to help you, and willing to listen, and I dare say they would rather listen to you for 3 or 4 hours, go through your life story, than hear a 10-minute eulogy covering your life at a funeral, and that's pretty much it.
There you go, people. I hope something in this episode has reached out to you and sparked something in you. But we'll finish it there. Thank you to Aaron again, and thank you for listening to the Football and Feelings podcast.